Hi, it's Kim, and I'm talking to you today about designing a high quality worksheet. And I'm going to do that by pulling out some examples I've got on file. So here goes, here's the first one. Okay, this worksheet is aimed at stage 4. What you will notice about this worksheet, there's not too much text. It uses colour, it uses different font, and it is all fitted into 2 pages. Okay, so what makes this sheet quite effective? It's got nice clear headings which are color coded and colored differently from the main body of the text. You'll notice that out of 2 pages, there's only about half a page of historical information, and that information is chunked into shorter paragraphs. Okay, most paragraphs here are about 5 lines in length, and that's enough for stage 4 students. It includes some visuals. Visuals are always nice. Students find them engaging. This particular visual is relevant to the topic of the worksheet. It's not actually relevant to the source questions that are being asked, but that's okay. It's all right to have some illustrations which are decorative. The information about Henry VIII here, that is relevant to the worksheet questions, but again, you'll see that it's nice and reasonably short and chunked. The thing that I really like here about the sources for this particular worksheet is that each source has just a short excerpt from the original. Do avoid having really long excerpts of historical quotes. It's usually far too dense and difficult for students to read, and they do tend to switch off and disengage. So this sort of length here is just perfect. The longest one here is just a bit over 2 lines. Okay, so a number of sources there, and then it also has a visual source, which will be referred to there in the questions. You'll notice that the questions here are in a different colour. That is nothing more than just to try and make the worksheet look a bit more engaging, to clearly indicate to students that the pace is changing and here are the questions that you need to answer. So this worksheet is working quite well. It is a reasonably substantial sheet. I would anticipate that students would take probably a good 20-25 minutes, depending on the type of students you have, to complete this worksheet. So by the time you set them up, you debrief into the worksheet, you give them time to work on it individually or groups or however it is that you're setting it up, and then you spend some time debriefing. This is the best part of a lesson, a 2-page worksheet. Let's take a look at the next one. This worksheet is a little bit simpler in design than the previous one. You'll see a nice clear heading up there, the Motte and Bailey Castle. This worksheet only has 1 short paragraph of historical information, which is just fine. This one's quite simple and easy and accessible. It's very, very attractive. You know, a few cartoon drawings here. The information, they just either write in or they type in their definitions here of the different parts of the castle, which is quite easy for them to do. The second task, they have to read through these descriptions of advantages and disadvantages, work out whether it's an advantage or disadvantage, and then cut and paste or write it into the appropriate place in the column. So this will work out to about a maximum of 2 pages once it's completed. This type of worksheet for a Year 7 or 8 student is probably, it's still going to take them a good 20-25 minutes to do. By the time you introduce the activity, they read the information, you field any questions, they type in their definitions, they read through these advantages, disadvantages here and decide where to put them. That's still a substantial amount of work for younger students to do. But with this sort of worksheet, if you have a mixed ability classroom, and most of us do, you need to have some sort of activity that the more able students can move on to, so something a bit more challenging, because they will finish that quite quickly, I should say. Let's move on to my third example. Okay, this is a stage 5 worksheet, just looking at the causes of World War I. Again, you can see here that it's not too dense with information. So we have descriptions of causes, imperialism, nationalism, allied systems, and so on. Okay, but none of these little boxes have too much information. And then there are examples of each one of those causes over here. And it's a really nice worksheet. They read through each one of these examples and then they have to work out which one of the causes is an example of. So a nice thinking activity for them to do. I think this will take your students, depending on ability level, maybe somewhere around 10 or 15 minutes, depending on their ability level. So, it's probably about a third, maybe half a lesson, again, depending on the type of students you've got. The features of this worksheet, which make it quite successful, again, it's clearly laid out. It uses the color coding here, which adds to the visual appeal. The information is really nicely and easily contained. Okay, and it's accessible for students to read through. Let's have a look at my last example. Okay, the last example. So you might not like the Urky green. I don't like the Urky green either. But, it's so simple, but putting a color on the back of a page, it can often make a worksheet just look more interesting. It's a nice clear heading here. It's a picture of the Prime Minister whom they're writing up a mock interview of, so it's relevant and it adds visual appeal. This text here is not historical information. This is setting the scene. This is what you're going to do. There have been a number of websites included here to give them some points of reference where they can collect information. You'll notice here that there are only 6 questions on the page. You want to aim to have a maximum of, say, about 5 questions per page. So if you have a 2-page spread, let's say a maximum of 10 questions, maximum. Okay, otherwise it's just too much and it's too overwhelming for students. You'll also note here on the questions that there are no double-barreled questions. Okay, always avoid double-barreled questions. Okay. So the key things, the key takeaway points for you is that 1, your worksheets have to be visually engaging. That means in the set out and layout, color coding, the inclusion of illustrations or pictures. It's not just all about having pictures, it's also about the layout, color coding, and accessibility. So, sorry, that first point, just reiterating, is visual engagement. The second key point about your worksheet is that it is not too text dense. You don't want too much text on a worksheet, even for your seniors. It's no longer accessible and easy for them to navigate around. So again, for your stage 5 and stage 4, which is what we're working on this semester, keep your text to about a maximum of a half or 3 pages over a 2-page spread. That would be a good rule of thumb for you to take on board. Okay, we're going to work on some of these examples in our tute class. I hope that was helpful. See you soon.